Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show. We've got Phil Moeller on the line with us. So, Phil, how's it going today?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, nobody else really is going to notice this unless I say it, but Phil also has a podcast and we're doing back-to-back recordings. So, when you get a chance, head over to his podcast and Phil, remind me the name of that.
The Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. And yes, we are shifting gears from interviewer to interviewee. So if I start asking questions of Brian, everyone will know why.
Yeah, exactly. And it is kind of weird, being interviewed and then switching around. And so, but yeah, I've done this podcast about 500 times before. So I think habit's going to take over real soon. But that said, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So thanks for that intro, Brian. Phil Moeller. I'm from Ohio, married to my wife, Marsha. We have 5 young kids. I started buying real estate in 2013 and have slowly grown that over the years to where it is today. So happy to get into a lot of details throughout that journey, whether that's how I got started, why I got started, how I shifted to multifamily, which Brian and I both love.
So what were you doing before real estate? How about that one?
Yeah. First, if I go way back, I've always been entrepreneurial. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family.
Yep.
So my dad and his brothers, grandpa started a trucking company. I was kind of around that, probably formed my mindset a little bit around just
Mhm.
wanting to be a business person. But I went into engineering. I was very analytical. I was good at math. So I was kind of guided in that direction. Hey, go get
Yep.
a safe corporate career job. And that's what I did. I did that for several years. I tried a couple of
Mhm.
side hustles without real success, but I picked up a book probably in 08, 09 called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure has been referenced probably not 500 times, but
Mhm.
probably over 100 times on your show, if I had to guess.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I think it connected for me the dots between being a business owner and kind of the framework of how to do it and how to think about it a little bit more. So I
Mhm.
got very, very excited when I read that. And after I did that, I was working in the corporate world as a engineer. And then also I became a product manager and eventually leadership roles
Mhm.
in the corporate world, which was great. And I felt like it could have an impact, but it really just, I wasn't all in on it. And I started thinking about real estate really in 2010. As I said, I'm very math and analytical. So
Mhm.
I thought about it a lot for a long time, overanalyzed the heck out of deals, but finally pulled the trigger on my first investment house in 2013, a single family house. And that was a major pivot point for me.
It was huge for me as well. It's one of those things where can I really do this? Can I really do this? Can I really do this? So you went through all the analysis, you went through all of that, you overcame it, you pulled the trigger on your first property. How'd things go from there with real estate wise?
Yeah, so it took me a couple of years to pull the trigger on the first
Yeah.
one, analysis paralysis. The question I really asked myself, and I'll probably refer to it again, but what will I wish I had done today, 10
Yep.
years from now? Or this simple phrase that I like to go back to, fear, regret, not failure. That's what got me to buy the first house. Again, it
Mhm.
took me a couple of years. After the first house, it took me 3 or 4 months for the next one, and then 3 or 4 months later for the next one. And I was kind of off and running in there. I learned the Burr method.
Mhm.
I think that was on the third or fourth house where I was like, oh,
Okay.
I can use the home equity line of credit.
Mhm.
I can buy this property. I can basically flip it, refinance capital out. And then if it appraises and I do a good enough job, I can have no cash into this thing, but still
Yeah.
be making $100, $200 a month of cash flow plus the other benefits of real estate.
Mhm.
So that I'll go back to being the math guy.
Yeah.
While it slowed me up, once I realized, oh, the numbers just work in several different ways in our favor here, I
Mhm.
was more convicted after that first one as I started to see the numbers work. I was like, okay, I got to go do more. And I took, quote, a little bit bigger risks because I was more educated on it
Mhm.
from taking action.
Yeah. And one of the things I would counter with, once you educate yourself, what previously looked like a really, really big risk, if you have the education, if you've got the know-how, the risk level drops significantly,
A hun-
So,
100%.
yeah.
And I,
I
I
mean,
also like when I look at risk, what is the worst thing that can happen? What is
yep.
the best thing that can happen?
Yeah.
And the other thing I say about my first deals, I looked at it and I was overly worried about what the worst thing could be is that I might lose 5, 10, 15, $20,000. And that could have happened. It
Mhm.
didn't, but that could have happened. But I was looking at the best thing that could happen, and I could say I could have made 5, 10, $15,000. I
Mhm.
ended up making a little bit more on that. But the
Yeah.
best thing that happened to me was I overcame the fear. I understood it. I took action, and it gave me the confidence to go to the next one. So the best thing that happens a lot of time isn't a financial return, but it's the education and the confidence you get from taking action.
I love that perspective. What's the best thing that can happen? And what's the worst thing that can happen? I remember doing that exercise when this is like 4 or 5 years ago, when I was contemplating retiring from my Marine career and going into real estate full time, and I started thinking about what's the worst thing that can happen. And I realized that the worst thing that could happen is I utterly fail at real estate and I have to go get a job. And then I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm already living my
Right.
worst case scenario. I had that dawn on me. I'm like, I am living my worst case scenario right now. I'm
And I
like,
think what gets a lot of us though, Brian, it's actually so funny you say that, because I was like, I'll go get a job. And I thought that sounded like such a horrible thing.
"Mhm,
What really holds us back, I think, and that is the fear of what other people think sometimes. If I go do something and I fail at it, but then I have to go back to my job, your situation is the same. It's just your mindset around the situation that has changed. What do people think of me? Am I a failure? So, by the way, even if you do that, you're going to learn through that process and it's going to better prepare you for the next time.
So yeah, I think when you start looking at the risk, when you start looking at what to do next, take a risk. Bet on yourself, I think is what I've learned more
Love
times than
that phrase. Yeah, I love
bet on
that phrase.
yourself. So awesome. So you started picking up steam, you started, applying the Burr method, getting more and more. Were they all single family up front, or did you
Sing,
start getting into larger stuff?
Yeah, single family and duplex. So from 2013 to 2017, we
Mhm,
bought probably between 15 and 20
mhm.
buildings, either single family or duplex. So I think at its peak, we were up to 25
Okay.
doors of single family duplexes. But in 2017, that was the next big shift,
Mhm.
which came from a challenge.
Yeah.
So we're managing these. My wife is managing. So the whole reason we started this all was she was a hairstylist and
Mhm.
we wanted to slowly pare her back on her hours as we started having kids. So that was the why, which I think getting clarity as to what you want will also help you make these decisions and get over the hump and get over the fear. So
Yeah.
clarifying your why, also know that your why will change over time.
Mhm.
But our first why was getting her out of her job. Well, fast forward 4 years, the discussion is I didn't sign up for this. That's my wife telling me I didn't sign up because we're managing 25 different tenants, single family,
Yeah.
all over the place, scattered, as you know. So we're at this pivot point and decision point. Do we sell these and just stop this because we're working two jobs and it's a lot of work? Or do we really try to scale this and grow this? And we decided to scale it and grow it, but that means we had to shift to multifamily. So we said, okay, we're going to make this shift. How do we do this? We started educating ourselves on multifamily through podcasts, books on it, real estate investment association meetings. And we found a potential partner at a real estate investment meeting that had a deal in contract. And we worked out the partnership agreement and we partnered on that first one. And I'd say the major thing there is he found the deal. It was myself and another guy, three of us. And we brought in a fourth partner that had done it before, that had the
Mhm.
experience in multifamily,
Yeah.
that maybe we just needed to give us the confidence to go do it. So that was the next big pivot after
Yeah.
single family, is the shift to multifamily in
So
2017.
you talk about the scaling thing. I mean, from one perspective, I would say if you have 25 single family homes, you've hit the scale button. I had three, and the prospect of going from three to 25 seemed like it would take forever, and it seemed
Yeah.
daunting. So that was like my transition. But from where I was, 6, 7 years ago, when I'm looking at my three single family homes and looking to scale, you were already scaled according to my 2016 perspective.
Yep.
So 25 to multifamily, walk us through that thought process a little bit more.
Well, I talked through your
Yeah.
vision, your purpose, your why might change. And for us, it had. So by that time, my wife, Marcia, was working much less. But now I still knew how real estate and how the numbers could work. So now I'm thinking, okay, I think I want to leave my job. I'm a business person. I'm an entrepreneur. I want financial independence. So that became the new vision, new purpose, the new why. And there was frustration knowing 25 houses didn't get us there. And if it's going to take 75, that's going to take forever, because the difference between single family and multifamily isn't like managing the tenants and the properties once you have them. It's not that much different on a per unit basis. It's a little more for single family than multifamily, but it's not that much different. The big difference is the number of acquisitions you have to do to grow. We would have had to do 50 more acquisitions if we did one a quarter, 12 years. It would have taken a long time. Just the acquisitions process takes a fair amount of time and effort. You're financing every single one, working with a loan officer, just all appraisal, versus I just did a walkthrough Wednesday. We walked through 40 units for a 100-unit purchase. In 3 hours, we walked through them all. And I would have, for 100 units, normally I'd have to walk through 100 units. and that would take forever. So the acquisitions process and the scalability of that is what I think the mindset shift was. If we want to get to where I want my vision of leaving my job eventually, and we need at least 75, 100 doors, whatever it might be, it's going to take forever if we do single family. So we went into multifamily.
That's the exact same mindset I think I had. And looking at the time, I figured I could probably buy two or three per year. And my number was 60. When I started looking at the
Yep.
representative deal, how many deals I would need to, not have to work again. I think 60 was my number. And I'm just like, man, if I can do three a year, that's going to take me 20 years, And so
Yeah.
same thing for me. It's just multifamily. And you're absolutely right. I mean, buying a 24 unit apartment complex or a 50 unit apartment complex, one loan, one closing. And that's one of the biggest benefits to it. One loan, one closing. You're not dealing with so many different people. It's one team and everything works out.
Yep, agreed. And then the other thing, so the next thing that happened was just like I made when I bought the first single family house and I
Yeah.
understood how the numbers work through the experience of my first multifamily, I understood how the numbers work and how they work differently. And a key component of how they work differently in multifamily than single family, which is the forced appreciation value add component. So in single family, you can flip a house and you can add value, but it's based on the retail perception of that property. In multifamily, as everyone knows, if you grow the revenue by better sales, better marketing, capital improvements, if you do address deferred maintenance and run it really well and it reduce the expenses, you're adding value to the property, not just adds cash flow, but adds equity. And
Yeah.
that was the big aha moment for me. 3, 6, 9 months into that first multifamily purchase
Yeah.
was, oh, we're like shifting the cash flow, but really the equity game long term. If I can keep doing this 1 or 2 deals a year, we can really shift the
Oh, yeah.
trajectory of our equity growth.
Yeah. With the syndication model, I mean, even if you're not syndicating, you make the most money on your properties when you sell. So I think every time I transact a property syndicating, I always look at that. You're talking about the building the equity. I always look at that as two paychecks. I'm getting a big paycheck right now, and I'm also getting a big paycheck for myself down the road when we either
Yep.
sell it or refinance or recapitalize or something like that. So it's great from several different perspectives, but there's nothing like, getting into a deal, and I mean, our most recent purchase was a $10 million property. I own a big chunk of that. I own over 10% of that. But yeah, you start looking at, how that property grows over time. For every $1 million that property appreciates, I've got another $150,000. It's amazing. I love it. I
Yep.
love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you started getting into multifamily, you started getting into the larger deals, your mindset expands, how have things progressed from there?
Yeah, so that first deal went really well. As I said, I started to see it 6 months in. We bought a little 16 unit, just a partner and I. But the first multifamily we bought, we sold 13 months later, and
Mhm.
we rolled that. Two of it,
Yeah.
we had set it up as a partnership division. Or I forget the exact
Mhm.
structure that we used, but we did a 1031 exchange from that property
Okay.
into a 70 unit property. In the next year, we accumulated another 86, 88 units or whatever it was. And we were kind of off and running. So we bought a 10 unit in there, a 20 unit in there, another 70 units in there, a
Mhm.
60 unit in there. And they're
Nice.
all really different levels of value add
Mhm.
phases. And, value add can be CapEx improvements. It can be just maybe lease up if there's high vacancy. It can be better sales and marketing, and it can be just rent growth and not a lot of like we bought a property that had long-term owners, kind of well maintained, but
Mhm.
cosmetically dated a little bit. So with
Yep.
paint and flooring, just some small things, they go a long, long way to reposition that property. So, fast forward and we have around 400 units or so that we directly manage, pretty much, myself and another partner, maybe a third partner on one of them. But it's been really life-changing for me, Brian, in a
Yeah.
lot of different ways. And just the cash flow and the equity growth we've been very blessed.
Yeah, my wife made that comment last night. I don't remember what we were talking about, but she just says it doesn't matter. We've been extremely blessed.
Yep.
It was over something money. I remember what it was. We're getting a new faucet for our sink because the old one's leaking. And she's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, we've got what we need. I don't care what faucet we have. It's just little things like that. But the idea of, just having that, hey, we've been very blessed with what we've had. And I think, financially, I think I've benefited more from real estate than in the last 5 years. And I think I did from a 20-year career, working for someone else.
From a real estate perspective and financial, if we talk about that specifically, you just have a lot of things working in your favor, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's the 5 ways to make money in real estate. Again, I'm sure your listeners know this, but there's cash flow, the principal payoff, depending on the type of debt, but principal pay down. There's just market appreciation. Leveraged market appreciation, by the way, is
Yep.
beautiful if done
Oh, yes.
wisely. Forced appreciation, value add, and then the tax benefits. And the tax benefits are very, very real as well. So
Mhm.
those things just start to stack up. And again, your phrase, don't wait to buy real estate and
Yeah.
wait. And I hope I didn't butcher it, but it's just so true. There's a snowball that happens slowly. It
Mhm.
slowly builds over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It
Yep.
takes hustle, it takes work, but it's worth it. And it can create a lot of different freedoms. And to
Yeah.
me, the biggest freedom that one can pursue is really having the freedom to pursue what their purpose is,
Yeah.
what they're bigger, freedom of time. What are you going to do with your time? I would tell people go pursue your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that's one thing that there's lots of different ways of saying that. I know, shoot, I just forgot his name, the who not how guy.
Yeah.
He's got his own different levels of freedom.
And Sullivan, right?
And Sullivan, yeah. But there's also one thing that I've always remembered from high school was like the Maslow's triangle, where the top little piece was the
Yeah. The
self-interest.
hierarchy of needs, right?
Yeah,
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You have to get through the bottom levels before you can actually pursue your purpose, and that's one thing that real estate really helps with is you do this long enough. I think you nailed it on the head. It's not get rich quick. It's work at it. You have five different things working in your favor long term, and you keep on pushing at it, and your wealth grows and your freedoms grow. And then you get to that point to where it's like, what causes do I want to support, or
Yep.
what do I want to do to fill my time, and
And I think depending on where listeners are in the process, don't get frustrated that you're not completely there.
yeah,
Because so I was actually on a call yesterday, so I'll just reference it. But there's kind of three phases that people are in. They're in
yeah,
the struggle, they're having success, or they're at significance.
yeah,
And know where you're at, but look forward to where you want to be
mhm,
and build your plan. Okay, if I really want to live a life of significance, what does that look like? That's going to make the struggle now worth it. That's going to make the effort, the grind, the struggles, the challenges, the headaches, whatever it might be, worth it right now. If you get the freedom to pursue what the mark you want to make, the purpose you want to have, the significance you want to have. So
yeah.
I think it's so important to begin with the end in mind, but know that there will be a struggle to get there.
Yeah. And begin with the end in mind. It was your podcast we were talking about that book.
Yeah, that is.
That's it.
I didn't even
Yeah.
realize I just said it.
Yep. That's
So
habit number 3, right?
I
Yeah.
don't
Number
know,
2?
but Brian referenced his most impactful personal development book as the Seven
Yeah.
Habits of Highly Effective People, which I coincidentally had sitting right here. But yes,
Mhm.
his phrase, I'm really good at stealing stuff from people,
Yeah.
by the way, Brian. It's all of the stuff I say is I've pulled it from somewhere, but that's
Yeah.
from Stephen Covey.
I heard somebody, this was a religious figure who was famous in our local area for like almost having the entire Bible memorized, right? Which, who does that? But I remember at one point he said something like, at first I was memorizing somebody else's words, but now these words are mine. And it's the same thing, maybe you borrowed it from Stephen Covey. Maybe that's the first time those words came into your head, but guess what? You own them now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you own them. So, I mean, maybe if you use them in the wrong place, you might have to pay a royalty or two, but yeah, you own those words.
I
So,
think we're safe here, Brian. I think we're
yeah,
safe.
I think so too. I think so too. So, but yeah, so anyway, getting back to life of significance, what are you pursuing? What's your big passion project?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First, we're focused on real estate. Really, the other phrase I've been thinking about is an inch wide, mile deep. Really staying focused in a couple of different areas.
Yeah.
I'm very entrepreneurial, so I can be thinking about all kinds of different things and projects and short-term rentals and commercial and multifamily and whatever it might be. I know multifamily. Multifamily is my focus.
Mhm.
Multifamily acquisitions, multifamily real estate, multifamily management. So that's what I'm focused on. That's the first thing. And
Mhm.
that's kind of this growing success and significance from a team building and financial perspective and what I can make, but what I can give as well, which is
Okay.
important to me. And I kind of have a structure set up on how I do that. But
Mhm.
then I've done for a while, but I'm putting more energy into it because it gets me so darn excited, is just helping other people and educating other people
Yeah.
on real estate, on business, on helping identify what their purpose might be, on I think the key factors of success.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that maybe you can hear in my voice gets me really excited and energizes me, and I'm passionate about leadership, all those things. They've just had such a big impact. Studying these things have had such a big impact on
Sure.
me over the last 20 years. I just want to have a small piece in helping even if it's just introduce people to
Mhm.
self-development. And then if I get them introduced, but they follow your podcast or
Yeah.
someone else's podcast or get introduced to a book that changes their life, that's all it takes
Yeah.
is a simple referral like that. So if I can do more of that, that's what gets me energized. So I launched a podcast, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
We have a local real estate meetup that I get to connect with people that are less experienced, more experienced, and
Mhm.
hopefully help them out. We're bringing investors in to help hopefully get them a return, but also now they're in our network. And real estate for me is the vehicle to bring them in the network and hopefully inspire and educate them to live their purpose.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I was at a mastermind this morning. You're talking about the giving back, but it's a local mastermind, and a bunch of people from the community. And I live in a small community, so it's fun getting together. But in that room, there's a lot of people who are there that have succeeded and are just giving back, and I love it. I'm kind of right in the middle in that room where certain subjects, but we started talking about Idaho Falls, small community. There's about 70,000 people, but we started tackling problems like how to help Idaho Falls grow. And somebody mentioned real estate. The two biggest ways that we can create wealth and make money is businesses and real estate. And all of a sudden they started asking me questions, and the same thing, I just lit up. It's just like, boom, this is my thing, this is what I get excited about. And
Yeah.
yeah, I left that meeting like supercharged. It's like, boom, yeah, but awesome, awesome.
I think if I go back to the story, the next big shift I'd talk about,
Mhm.
you triggered it here in my mind because you said you're a math guy. I'm a math guy, which
Yep.
means I'm also very analytical,
Mhm.
and I really think things through to a fault, unfortunately. The next big move after I kind of built up some multifamily was my W-2 exit in 2021.
Mhm.
And I solved every problem that didn't exist before that in my head leading up to it. I did an analysis of until age 90, what would my financials look like?
Mhm.
It was ridiculous, Brian.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable how much work I put into creating additional fear and other things as I left my W-2. It was
Yeah.
a good paying W-2, but the nice thing about real estate is you build equity and you build liquidity options. You build cash flow options. So even and that depends on the size of the portfolio. If you have a single family house, generally very liquid, probably 90 to 120 days,
Mhm.
it's liquid. Multifamily, maybe not 90 to 120, but maybe 3 months best case to 9 months a lot of times on an exit. But you're building this cash flow, but you just have these exit events and equity options. You can also refinance for cash. So ultimately, through all that fear and analysis paralysis, I convinced myself, yep, it's safe to leave my job because I not only have cash flow build up that I can live off of, not replace my income, but I can live off of, plus all these different equity options I had. And what I realized after I left my job is none of the limiting beliefs or fears actually took place. And the big shift, if people are in this phase, is in year one after leaving my job. If you think about while you're working, if you're working, let's say, to keep the numbers simple,
Mhm.
40 hours a week on your W-2 and 10 hours a week on real estate, 10 hours a week, 500 hours a year during the job. Now, shift that
Yeah.
50 hours a week on real estate.
Mhm.
I just 5x'd how much time and focus and energy I can put in real estate. The time I'm spending is more productive because I'm fully focused on it and I don't have the distractions of a job. So it's
Yep.
effective time.
Mhm.
So whatever you got done in 5 years with a job, you can get done in 1 year without a job. You can accelerate time. And that's what focus and inch wide, mile deep, that's what that means
Mhm.
is I didn't anticipate that. I didn't realize it. And what do you know?
Yeah.
We bought 3 or 4 multifamily deals, I think, in that first year when we exited.
Mhm.
And those have all been great deals for us. So just the time you gain, and someone said it, and I forget who, this is another quote I'm stealing, but if people are in this phase, don't be stupid about it. But how much is your job costing you?
Mhm.
And at some point, when you're far enough along and you have the education, your
Yeah.
job is costing you money. And it's time to leave and take the step. And if you're analyzing it, you're probably ready.
I felt that long before I thought that. My last year on active duty, it was, kind of when the whole COVID lockdowns were starting to end. But my last year on active duty, my job, I didn't really have a job, but I still had to show up to work every day, so I had a job, but the amount of stuff that I had to do on a daily basis went down significantly, is what I'm saying. So I remember that last year, I just felt like I am wasting my
Hmm.
time here. And I kept on thinking about, I was making a decent salary. I was pretty high up on that rank structure, and my take home pay was decent number, and we were living very comfortably. But the idea that I could make 2 or 3 times as much outside of that was just dragging on me. The entire last year was almost miserable. Prior to that, I loved my job. I loved being a Marine, but when the tables turned and I realized exactly that, how much is my job costing me, and I stuck with it because I wanted to get that pension. But quite honestly, I probably could have left 2 years early, not gotten my pension, and been better off financially now
Yep.
than I currently am.
Yeah, and we talked about it on
Yeah.
when I was interviewing you. So I don't
Yeah.
want to flip this like we talked about, but when you're trying to define what you're doing, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? Does it solve a problem for the world and does it make you money? And
Yeah.
if you're doing something that you're really not excited about or not passionate about, you're going to be aware of that. I'm not saying you can't be a happy person, but it's going to be certainly more difficult. I think true happiness is when you're in alignment with what your purpose is or what you think your purpose is.
I agree. I agree. All right, so we're winding down now. So we talked a lot of great stuff, and thank you for the tangents. I think they were all very, very worthwhile. So last couple of questions. First one is, what is next for you?
Yeah, we're in contract on a deal right now. We're getting ready to close in the next 30 days or so. So that's very, very exciting. And I'm
Nice.
hiring, you talked about it. I'm making a big hire right now. Operations leader for our real estate company is going to help with
Nice.
property management, with acquisitions, investor relations type stuff as well. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be a big
Mhm.
pivot that I'll talk about in the future, just bringing on another great team member. So I'm very excited about that. So in addition to growing the multifamily real estate portfolio. The other thing that I'm just super excited about is education. The other phrase I like is I can't connect all the dots forward, Brian. I
Yeah,
can see how the dots connected backwards when I talked about my first real estate purchase
true.
and where the dots ended up connecting to now. I just don't know where they all go. But what I know I'm passionate about is education,
Mhm.
is teaching people how to pursue their purpose and freedoms to get to their purpose. That really excites me.
Mhm.
So, I'm thinking about a book. I'm thinking about maybe building my own local mastermind group around this stuff. But for now, the podcast has been great. And not only can I deliver stuff and content to people that hopefully adds value to their lives, but
Mhm.
I get a lot out of the podcast too. I get to
Yeah.
interview really smart, really successful people in the podcast, and they can have an impact on me too from a selfish perspective. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm really excited about. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm energized as you can tell by it. So
Yeah.
I'm ready for more.
And I said this on your podcast. I've learned more from my podcast than I think anybody else could ever learn. So, what piece of advice would you give somebody who is just starting out along the multifamily path?
I kind of have 5 layers here that I want to talk about, but really quickly. First thing, define what you want and why. So I'll do second and third together.
Mhm.
Educate yourself, podcast, books, whatever it might be. Associate with others that are
Mhm.
successful. Get a coach, get a mentor, join a mastermind group. Those things are going to accelerate your
Mhm.
success. Fourth, take action.
Yep.
Be courageous, take action, get out there and go do it. Without action, you're just kind of in analysis paralysis. So take action. And then the last thing is be a leader, be an example to others, help others do it as well, serve others.
Yeah.
Those are kind of my 5 factors of success that I talk about.
Yeah.
And I have those because each of those steps in the process have had such a big impact
Mhm.
on my own success. So that's the guidance I would give people is get clarity on what you want, educate yourself, associate, take action, and be a leader.
Interestingly enough, those are the steps that I went through. I didn't have it, road mapped out before me, but those are the exact steps I went through in my multifamily journey. And maybe that's why I was successful. So I
Love
should
it.
have talked to you 6 years ago, but
Haha. I didn't have it
all
six
right.
years ago, so it wouldn't have worked. I would have not said any of this 6 years ago.
Yeah, right. I know. All right. So last question now, and that's, how can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. LinkedIn, I'm active on LinkedIn, so that's the best platform probably to follow me. We're putting our content on other
Mhm.
platforms as well, but LinkedIn is where we're the most active. And then appreciate the Moeller Real Estate and Business podcast. If people want to check us out and listen, I certainly appreciate that. And they can go from there to learn more if they want.
Sounds good. All right. Well, cool. Well, we'll have all the links to your podcast and to your LinkedIn profile and everything in the show notes for anybody. So they can just tap, swipe, and tap to get to know you a little better. But
Perfect.
with that said, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. Very much appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on, Brian. Thanks so much.
Awesome. And now a final reminder for everybody, don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait.